And being there week after week, being faithful. It means giving yourself in faith to a ministry. It means being in a place like this on Sunday night where you can gather and study the Word more in depth, or being at something like Community Bible Study or Bible Study Fellowship, or maybe somewhere else where you're doing an in-depth. It means praying. Those are all things you know, but frankly, I know sometimes we wish we could come and hear of a whole new set of things we could try, right? Because the things the Bible has already given us are hard to do and they're hard to sustain. But there's nothing new in that area. The spiritual disciplines are the spiritual disciplines. There's nothing new in that sense. They are your milk, and you have to drink the milk if you are going to grow strong and you are going to thrive and go forward. And the last one we'll both talk about is the wine. And we thought of that as wine is for exhilaration. It's for vitality. And I really believe that no matter how old a person gets, there is a child inside of them that still wants to sing and dance and clap and shout and celebrate. So, Tom, some ideas, I think, on that.
Well, I actually did speak at my home church this morning and did a little bit of an elaboration on one of the points that we talked about last week. And I summed up the message was really on, it challenged people to change their way of thinking about God. And many of us have this idea that God is a God of it's scarcity, this theology of scarcity, that there's really not that enough love to go around. There's not enough goodness to go around, that somehow if God decides to want to bless me, then maybe he's has some time for me after he gets done with all of the other things in his busy day. Maybe he'll come. This sort of idea that God is a bit stingy. We have to do a little bit. We have to tug on him a little harder before he dispenses his grace and goodness. But this idea of buying wine, yes, have the water if you're in the desert, if you're really in a deep situation, drink the water of life. And don't forget every day to take your nourishment, your time in prayer, your interaction with other believers, being in church, being in community. But don't also forget that God just likes joy for joy. He wants you to celebrate the stuff. He likes to party with you. He wants you to exult and exuberate. And that's what the wine, the image here, I think, of wine. And of course, in the ancient world, wine was drank regularly at meals. It was much more watered down, but it was a beverage that was drank around the table, and it was served at parties and dinners and celebrations. So the idea of wine here is the celebrating, the laughing, the affirming of one another, the joy that comes when you really grasp what it is that God is inviting you to.
So this idea of the water and the milk and the wine is God says, I'm going to give it to you in both quality and in quantity. He says, hearken diligently to me and eat what is good. Okay, that's quality stuff. And delight yourself, and I like the version that says in fatness, because good means that what God offers to you is top quality. It's the best there is. And the word fatness simply means there's a whole lot of it. So lastly, Isaiah tells us not only who it's offered to and what is being offered, but he says, now I'm going to tell you how you get to get it. And 12 imperatives just in those 3 verses. 3 of them talked about listening carefully to what God is saying. So if you want these benefits of the wine and the water and the milk, you got to be listening into God. You got to be leaning in really close to God. And then from there's 4 things that he tells us to do. The first he says is you've got to come, right? So Tom, talk about coming too.
Come, buy, eat, enjoy. So what does it mean to really come to God? And this is an invitation, and it's a relational kind of thing. If you are God, you are always present to your people. So if you imagine this relationship of you being a conscious being and God being a conscious being, God is always present to you. He never takes a hike. He never sleeps. He never leaves you. So his presence in you, if you're a believer, is guaranteed. Our problem is we don't always experience it. We go through various stages and various places. And that's why God has to invite us continually to say, come. Come into my presence. I'm here, but you need to come. The assumption being is that we are not always present to him. Loaded with distractions, busy, fatigued, tired, weighed down by our own sin, feeling life circumstances overwhelming and crowding things out. We have a long list of things that can take us away from an awareness of God. So when God invites us to come, he's not saying, come and I'll meet you. No, he's saying, come, I've already been here. I am here, but you need to come.
So maybe you've come, and then next he says you've got to buy. And this is a weird kind of transaction because you really cannot buy the blessings of God. You can't earn them by being righteous. You can't earn them by doing good deeds. And even if you could, we're all spiritually bankrupt, so that disqualifies us there. But there is a kind of transaction that goes on. And the idea of the transaction is Jesus has already bought and paid for the water and the wine and the milk. And basically, you have to receive those as if you had purchased them yourself. So that's the idea of the buying and the transaction. And so if you've come and you've made the transaction, then he says you have to eat, because God is not something to be studied. God is a person to be experienced, okay? And he is food for life, and he's joy for the soul. So you need to come, you need to buy, you need to eat, and lastly, right, you need to, enjoy.
Enjoy. So we had actually there is a meeting going on at my house that we ditched to be with you because you guys are just so special and important to us, right?
That's right.
That's right. Yeah, you got it. But they ordered in Chinese food, and there it was all in the little cardboard boxes, that you see everywhere, and so it's all set out there. And that's kind of the picture of grace and God. He's set it out there on the table. But I'm not going to enjoy it unless I go in there and grab a fork or a chopsticks or whatever and start taking it and actually eating it. And that's the picture, the come, buy, eat, and enjoy. And so the enjoyment part, I think we often neglect that. We sort of forget that God just enjoys joy. Back in the seminary days, I had a professor, and his favorite little mantra was a shared joy is a double joy. That you get together in a joyful frame of mind and you share that with someone else, and it kind of just escalates. It's the same on the negative side. When you're afraid and you share your fear, you're scared and somebody else is scared, then it can accelerate. Well, on the positive side, joy, love, and celebration, it can be pretty contagious. So.
It was actually sort of tempting to just stop here and expand these points, because so far it is a really encouraging message, right? Who doesn't want quality and quantity with God if you're a believer? Who doesn't want to know these wonderful things you can have? And I think Tom was saying today, he goes, it would be easy if we just stopped here at these 3 verses to sort of think that this is this amazing buffet, Tom put it, right? You get to go to God's buffet, fill yourself up, and then I don't need you anymore for a while, and leave the restaurant, right, and go your own way. But Isaiah doesn't leave us there. He actually gives us verses 6 through 9, which we now need to take a little bit of a look at, because it gives us the other side of the coin, so to speak.
Would you like to read those?
Oh, well, I can, but trade me places then.
Yes, I
Now that I wear reading glasses, I can't just see that far away. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call on him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the evil man his thoughts. Let him turn to the Lord, and he will have mercy on him, and to our God, for he will freely pardon. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Tee-
is that
tee
my
it
little,
up.
little start there? Okay. Well, really, we're going to look at two things in this particular passage: what it means to seek the Lord and why you should want to seek the Lord. To seek the Lord really just means to call on him. It's the same way you call a waiter, the same way you call 911. It's so easy, a child can do it. It's simply calling out and say, God, I need you. God, please listen to me. God, are you there? It's just the easiest and most natural way to begin a conversation with God. So that's the first step in what it means to seek the Lord. But Isaiah gives a little bit more. So we've just talked about all these really great benefits when you seek the Lord, the water, the wine, and the milk. But along with that, Isaiah goes, is the idea that you also have to accept, I'd hate to call them the negative, but maybe the hard things that come with it. And he says, you have to forsake your wicked ways, and you have to forsake your unrighteous thoughts. Because the idea is, if you're saying, God, I need you, God, help me, God, I want you, then you can't also be holding on to the things that don't reflect the character of God, the old way that you used to do things. So if you take seriously the positive side, you also have to take seriously this hard side. You cannot seek God and practice sin or plan sin in your head at the same time. And what happens when you really take this idea of calling on God and seeking God is he's naturally going to start revealing those things in your life that you need to give up anyway. It's just the natural part of being one of his children. As he's just going to start saying, you can't keep thinking that same way now. You can't start planning the same things you did. You can't keep doing the same things that you did. You can't seek God where he's not found, and God is never found in sin. So there's that idea. I think you would never do this to me, but imagine you moving out of our house into an apartment with another woman.
Scandalous.
It would be bad, right?
It would be bad.
Having an affair.
That would be bad.
And then you call me and say, Kathrine, I'm looking for you, right? I'm wanting you. And I say, Tom, have you forsaken this other woman?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I'm working on it.
Then I would say, Tom, you are not seeking me. Your call is empty. You will seek me and you will find me as a wife when you forsake her and all others. And that's exactly the picture that Isaiah is presenting us to hear. It's like a spouse who is going off and committing adultery and at the same time think that he can still have his wife or she can still have her husband. And God says, no, when you really seek me, it involves a forsaking of these other relationships. And then he goes on to say the other thing that results from calling God is not only do we stop this way of thinking and this way of practicing, but we also have this idea of our thoughts are not our own thoughts anymore, right? Go to that verse and explain what that means.
My thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declared the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. And
oh, can I tell him, my seminary professor?
you can. You just interrupted me, but
I know.
you can.
I have to do it at least once. Okay. So when I was in seminary, my professor did a little thing on some of the most misquoted verses in the Bible. And he said that this is actually misquoted in terms of its context. Because when people say, oh, God's ways are not our ways and his thoughts are not our thoughts, usually it's when we're in a puzzling situation. Maybe we're going through an ordeal, or sometimes it can be a loss. Somebody lost a child, or they lost a spouse, a child in a car accident, or some tragedy. And we don't know how to explain it, right? It just seemed so just a tragedy. And so we just say, well, God's ways are not our ways, and his thoughts are not our thoughts. And that is a wonderfully true theological statement, but the support doesn't come from these verses, because we just read how our thoughts are evil and our ways are evil. And now he's going, but God's thoughts are not evil, and God's ways are not evil. And the whole point of seeking God is we do want to know his ways, and we do want to be like him and think like him. So now you can go on and explain what that means.
Yeah, it's not that God's ways are unknowable. It's that they become clouded when our own fallen way of thinking intervenes. And I think we mentioned this a little bit last week, that we have to come to terms with how pervasive that is in our lives. I mean, the record of your thought lives for the last day, would you want that actually digested and on the screen for everyone to see, everything you thought about? I wouldn't. I mean, we really are deeply fallen, and there are many things about us that cloud our judgment, that cloud our thinking, that make God seem distant and obscure. And so the invitation to come, buy, eat, water, milk, and wine, along with that is forsake and turn away from the things in your own reason.